Welcome to the Best Little Town Podcast, your go-to source for everything happening in the town of Bedford's local government. Whether it's new initiatives or important decisions shaping our town's future, you'll hear it right here. This podcast is dedicated to keeping our residents informed and engaged.
Hello, and welcome to the Best Little Town Podcast. It is Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. My name is Bart Warner. I have the privilege of serving as the town manager of Bedford and also as your host for this podcast episode, which is designed to provide a recap of events from our council meetings and the activities related to the business of your town government in your community here in Bedford. Of course, I'm joining you today because we had a council meeting last night. It was a little bit different, very well attended, a lot of robust discussion related to an issue that was kind of stirred up a bit in the community. And without further editorial comment about that, I'm going to just jump right in. Things started out with allowing Councilman Todd Foreman to attend by virtual means. He had to request that due to work requirements that led him to be out of town last night, but he did participate through the virtual platform available on a motion by Councilman Stacey Haley, seconded by Vice Mayor Darrell Updike. Council unanimously voted to approve Councilman Foreman's participation in that manner. A lot of discussion in the past couple of weeks about the possibility of changing the name of our community. That arose from the previous meeting when Vice Mayor Updike broached the subject, and council kind of discussed that a little bit, but took no action. And then it kind of took on a greater life of its own. And we had a room full of people, which is always a great thing. We anticipated probably were interested in that particular topic. So in an unusual move, council decided to place discussion of that issue first and foremost on the agenda. There was a discussion item on the printed agenda anyway, which again probably attracted attention. But in order to address some of the concerns head on, C.G. Stanley, our mayor, and the rest of the council members decided to get ahead of it, to provide information, and ultimately to put it to bed, but we'll get to that point in just a moment. Mayor Stanley addressed the issue, mentioned how we got there, which was the fact that it was kind of an academic discussion on the part of council at their previous meeting on September 9th. CG said that he had received a lot of comments and feedback from citizens, which he appreciated. He also made a point to say that Vice Mayor Updike's introduction of the item is, from his view, related to Darrell's perspective as something of a creative thinker and sometimes an outside-the-box kind of person. And CG explained that he appreciates the impact of open conversation and, allows that kind of thing and actually encourages it amongst council members and within the community. That said, he stated that he ultimately was opposed to the idea of changing the name of the town of Bedford. Basically, we went around the dais there at the council meeting. Councilman Jay Ippolito was very succinct in his comments. He shared his opinion that we do not need to change the name of the town at this time. Councilman Stacey Haley likewise said that he appreciated people who think outside the box and bring up different ideas for discussion. He provided some insight into a few activities from past years. One was a rebranding by the town, which took place 7 to 8 years ago. He also talked about some of the history of the town and the fact that the name of the community has changed since the 1700s when we were first incorporated as the county seat. Councilman Haley ultimately said that he was also against changing the name, citing that we have other priorities in terms of cost and budget facing the town. Next, Councilman Todd Foreman shared his view that the cost associated with making a change to the name of the town was too much in his opinion. He also shared that he had not received one positive comment from anyone in response to the discussion. He also stated that he was against changing the name of the town. Next, Vice Mayor Updike gave an explanation of his motives and rationale behind bringing it up for discussion. Daryl basically noted that he did not intend to create anything controversial, but was basically just trying to stir things up a little bit in terms of thought about what we need to do to move the community forward. He noted that we need to start focusing on infrastructure improvements. We also need to do what we can to bring more investment into town. Daryl explained, though, that he wants to know how we're going to do that, and that's really his focus. He shared his view that we need to stop doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results. He said that he appreciated all the turnout and he was in favor of ending the discussion about the issue himself, having brought it up originally, because he felt that it was cost prohibitive. Ultimately, he said most important to him was the influence of public opinion, and he stated that if the community is against it, he is also against it. Councilman Dwight Evans was the next to speak. He stated that he kind of echoed the other comments made by council members, appreciated all of the input he received, but he is also against the name change. Next was Councilman Dave Foster, who stated that he was also against changing the name of the town, not only from a fiscal perspective, but an operational perspective. At that point, Councilman Todd Foreman made a motion that we do not change the name of the town, an official motion, which was seconded by Vice Mayor Daryl Updike. That motion was passed unanimously. And in response to that, a couple of citizens rose to speak immediately. Ann DeLong spoke about the fact that she appreciated council's quick response to this concern that was raised within the community. She noted that she had solicited signatures for a petition from citizens expressing their opposition to the change, and noted that in a very brief amount of time, she had literally hundreds of signatures. But again, she thanked council for responding quickly and appropriately, and also stated that with all the energy in the room, she encouraged people to really come together based on the obvious passion and concern for our community. Jane McKeon then rose to speak, and she also noted that she was very pleased by the energy in the room and the passion of the community as well. At that point, we jumped back into the regular agenda as published. The minutes from the previous meeting had been approved. That was from September 9th. Next was my report as town manager, and I just had a couple of things to touch on, which I'll repeat this morning. We expressed our thanks to Heather Alto and the Central Virginia Business Coalition for presenting Centerfest this past Saturday. Also, our annual fall cleanup event will take place for 1 week from October 6th to October 10th. And this is a service wherein the town offers seasonal pickup to help customers dispose of unwanted items. Residents must have a current town trash removal service account to participate. Pickup of the items is intended to take place on regularly scheduled trash service days. So if your trash is typically picked up on a Tuesday, for instance, the week of October 6th, that's also the day we would intend to get your cleanup week events. For people who miss their pickup day, current customers can deliver their unwanted items free of charge to the town's landfill facility located at 856 Orange Street. I also shared that with regard to the name change discussion, I had not invested a great amount of effort in response to that personally at that point. I had consulted a professional colleague who was a former commander of an Air Force base whose name was changed. And based on that interaction, I received a cost estimate that was pretty high of what impact it would have on the town just in terms of our operations and our labeling. And with that, we next moved into appearances before council. There were more than a few citizens who spoke last night. First was Candy Shackelford. She expressed her appreciation to council for keeping the name the same. She shared her view that we do have some issues downtown, and particularly maintenance problems, and asked council to consider development and enforcement of some standards of upkeep. She also noted that we have 2 hotels currently being developed within town. One of those is a Hampton Inn up on Burks Hill Road. The other is a boutique hotel in the former old yellow building on the middle school campus, and noted that that will bring a lot of people to town, and we want to make sure that we present our best selves, rather, in terms of the appearance of downtown. Next to speak was Leslie Mahaffey. Leslie works at the Bedford County Museum. She also thanked council for their decision, and she spoke to the history of the community and provided a great deal of information about how Bedford was first created as the county seat for Bedford County when it was created. Well, actually going back to the creation of Campbell County from Bedford County, and the fact that New London was the county seat prior to that, but with the new creation of county boundaries, there was a new county seat created where we sit right now that was originally called Liberty, but Leslie provided some really great information and background to that. She mentioned her affiliation with the Bedford Museum, spoke to the architecture and history of that particular building, and she invited people to visit. Just as a reminder, I'll put a plug in. The Bedford County Museum is located on East Main Street, right next door to the municipal building and right across the street from the courthouse at the corner of East Main and Court Street. They are open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Ms. Mahaffey encouraged people to stop in and see what's there. She noted some of the specific exhibits, including an exhibit dealing with the Vietnam War that will be currently running through the fall of the year. She noted that there is a $5 admission charge. She graciously offered to waive that if people want personal tours, but we'll ask you to be gracious in your consideration of that offer. Next to speak was a gentleman named Hugh Letterman, who stated that he moved here 4 years ago from the Washington, D.C. area. He shared his view that traffic, certainly in this area, is much better compared to what he experienced previously. Also, crime issues were better. And he shared his view that as a small town, we need to focus on doing the things that small towns do well, and he encouraged us to keep doing that. Irene Catlin had registered to speak, but at that time was not present in the room. So next was Susan Kirby. She thanked council for their handling of the naming issue with particular class and sensitivity. She did ask for some consideration of the change in business solid waste collection, sharing her view that that businesses would now be charged for that, which, following up a bit on that, that's a bit of an unusual point. Commercial trash services have been provided for a fee for quite a long time now. Those charges have appeared on utility bills, so it's possible that businesses have not noticed that. Again, we're discontinuing that service on October 1st based on a number of budgetary and financial considerations. That will be disappearing October 1st, so just wanted to make that administrative point in response to Ms. Kirby's pointing out of a concern there, which we appreciate. She also requested that we extend landfill hours during cleanup week to allow people who may not be able to access the landfill during business hours to be able to drop off their things if they miss their pickup date. She noted that I mentioned previously, council is considering selling several town-owned parcels. She encouraged council to act in the best interests of the town if they pursue those matters and not to sell for a low price. She also encouraged greater review and scrutiny of our budgetary process and requested more focused attention on parks, in particular the need for water fountain facilities there. That concluded the appearances before council. Next were the council comments, which is a regular feature of our meetings. Councilman Dave Foster began by thanking all the people who were present for attending and sharing his positive personal opinion of the Centerfest event that had taken place the previous weekend. Councilman Dwight Evans also thanked everyone who was physically present and who attended. Vice Mayor Darrell Updike likewise thanked everyone in attendance and shared shared his good humor about the events of the past couple of weeks and the comments he had received. He shared his view that the Centerfest event this past weekend was very successful. He also noted that locally, American Legion Post here in town is celebrating its 106th anniversary as of September 23rd. Daryl also commended the EDA, Mary Zirkle, and staff for the energy into developing a metal workforce training center. This is a redevelopment of a former industrial site in town. A lot of people may remember it as Wheelabrator. It was most recently identified as Winnoa. That was essentially a steel foundry. Wheelabrator, not trying to get too far out of my depth here, basically took large ball bearings and ground them into smaller ball bearings, and there's a complete smelting operation there related to the steel industry. They did that for several applications, including brake pads and powder coating. Unfortunately, they went out of business due to international decisions made, frankly, in conjunction with the response to the COVID epidemic. The town EDA has purchased that property and are beginning a metal workforce training center, which addresses an identified shortage of metal workers throughout the country, and the fact that, in particular here in our part of Virginia, we are well positioned to pick up and address that shortage and create a new economic opportunity that's both educational and productive in terms of manufacturing. Councilman Todd Foreman spoke next. He, again, like everyone else, thanked everyone for being physically present, said he also appreciated the passion of the community and the fact that people care very deeply about this place. He also spoke in terms of Vice Mayor Updike's original bringing up of the topic and said that he appreciated Daryl's effort to think outside the box. Councilman Jay Ippolito likewise thanked everybody for coming out and personally recognized some of the speakers and some of the folks in the crowd who he has interacted with directly. Mayor C.G. Stanley completed the comments by council by saying he appreciated the crowd at Centerfest. Also noted that town council is working on several matters of concern to the community and has a strategic planning retreat scheduled in October. He also noted that there's an ongoing downtown strategy development process, which is being led by Mary Zirkle and the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. And he also recognized Leslie Mahaffey at the Bedford Museum for all that she does for the community, and likewise closed by thanking everyone for attending personally. Ms. Mahaffey got back up to mention one other item of business that the Bedford Museum is involved in. The museum is involved in purchasing banners honoring 14 men who died in service to our country in Vietnam. Those banners will be unveiled at the dedication of the new Vietnam War Memorial on the grounds of the courthouse on November 22nd. And she particularly thanked Councilman Jay Ippolito for his involvement in facilitating that process. Again, echoing the comments of council and the fact that we had such a good crowd last night, we encourage people to participate actively in the life and activities of your town government. Again, our council meetings are always open. We're glad to see people there in person, but if you can't make it, we do live stream those, and we also include recordings of those on YouTube for viewing later, which is sometimes helpful. So I know at a staff level, we oftentimes refer back to those as well as the minutes to double check some things that we need to make sure we're clear on in terms of the facts. I did neglect to mention that prior to the regular meeting, we had a work session dealing with the power cost adjustment. That is a fee that is added to everyone's utility bill that is designed to minimize radical changes in our purchased power arrangements. Again, as most people know, we do not generate nearly as much power as we use here within the community, so we have to buy that from other sources, and that is transmitted through other systems, including AEP and points farther beyond. That involves some charges that can fluctuate wildly, and in response to that, about 15 years ago, the PCA was implemented to kind of act as a shock absorber. That was in response to the fact that we got a one-time, 1-month bill of $750,000 for a transmission cost related to our use during the wintertime that we had to pass along, and it was unexpected and was kind of a big immediate impact at the time. So the PCA exists to kind of mitigate that and spread those impacts out over time with the intent of minimizing that. On the occasions where the purchase power environment is good and favorable and our costs are a little bit less, the PCA is adjusted to be reduced. More often than not, we find that the cost of power is increasing and has been for years, and at that point, we do have to adjust the PCA upward. That is typically done on a 6-month basis and is reviewed and takes effect in November and May of each year. And that's based on the demand models that we monitor on an ongoing basis. John Wagner noted that the next time for review and possible implementation of a change would be this upcoming November. However, since council did adopt a significant increase in electric rates recently that take effect in October, staff will not be recommending an increase in the PCA in November. Instead, we're going to monitor the situation, see what our rate change did to mitigate those costs, and revisit it in May. Now, in the event that the PCA calculation could actually be reduced in November, we will follow up on that, but John and I both explained to council that's probably an overly optimistic view. And so just from a customer standpoint, just want people to be aware of, there was a discussion of what the PCA is, what it's designed to do, but given the impacts that will be facing everybody immediately October 1st, we do not intend to add to that burden through the PCA mechanism in November. Getting back to the council agenda from last night, we did have one revision to the agenda, which I had requested. The Bedford County YMCA is advised that they are once again sponsoring their annual Peaks of Otter Christmas Classic Foot Race on Saturday, December 6th, and had submitted an application and a request to close streets. So I asked council to add that as an item under the consent agenda. Next item on the agenda was a public hearing dealing with a budget amendment for fiscal year 2026 to appropriate funding for outstanding fiscal year 2025 purchase orders in an amount not to exceed $876,309. Public hearing was opened. There were no speakers, and so the public hearing was then consequently closed. Next on the item was the request from the Bedford Area Family YMCA to host the annual Peaks of Otter Christmas Classic 5K foot race on Saturday, December 6th. That's on the 5K course will be on the loop, which of course is Peaks, Whitfield, Oakwood, and Longwood. The race start time will remain the same as in years past, which is 8:30 a.m. They expect approximately 600 runners to participate. Letter will be sent to all residents of that area, identifying and alerting them to the fact that there will be a race on that Saturday morning. The road will essentially be coned off for the inside lane to be used for participants from 7:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. And the YMCA will provide appropriate notification to the fire department, police department, as well as fire and rescue of the street closings. On a motion made by Councilman Dwight Evans, seconded by Councilman Stacey Haley, Town Council unanimously approved the request to close streets for the YMCA's annual Peaks of Otter Christmas Classic 5K foot race from 7:30 a.m. to 11 o'clock a.m. on December 6th, 2025. Moving into new business, following up from the public hearing, was a request for reappropriation of funds from outstanding fiscal year 25 purchase orders. At the end of fiscal year 2025, there were certain purchase order projects which were not fully completed and which resulted in outstanding carryover balance. As part of the fiscal year-end procedures, departments are asked to review all open purchase orders for accuracy. These requests are then reviewed and the balance is included in the fiscal year 25 audited financial report. These commitments are recognized as assigned funds in the audited financial statements, but this rollover does not impact the year-end unassigned fund balance. The total amount of requests totaled $876,308, and in order to account for these purchase orders in the new year, a budget rollover of the encumbered funds is requested. Again, this relates to the fact that the town operates on a fiscal year that begins on July 1st of each year and runs through June 30th. Obviously, we continue to provide services and undertake activities on behalf of our citizens in between that time, and that harsh limit when the year changes from June 30th to July 1st doesn't mean that we stop what we're doing and then reappropriate everything for budgeting purposes. Basically, what last night's request represents is the fact that we're continuing to provide service even though there's a change in our fiscal year. There's a lot of times, particularly things such as paving, which takes place in the middle of summertime, that it makes the most sense to do it at that time, but we don't want to stop just based on the budgetary limitations of the date. So this relates to the nature of that business and the fact that while we have a 12-month box that our budget fits into, operationally we exist in real time. So last night, Town Council was requested to approve the budget amendments, which would appropriate budget to several general ledger accounts to continue work that essentially spanned one budget fiscal year to the other. On a motion made by Councilman Stacey Haley and seconded by Councilman Dave Foster, Town Council unanimously approved the request for the budget amendment. Last item of new business was a reimbursement resolution for the municipal building. A lot of folks are aware, some may not be, that our municipal building at 215 East Main Street has been experiencing several system failures in terms specifically related to heating, cooling, and electrical systems. Although the town has replaced significant components of these systems, the original system, designed back in 1966, is mostly still in use. The town has investigated the ability to continue to repair the existing components, but the system has deteriorated to the point, and we find that parts are frankly no longer available in many cases, that staff recommends a complete replacement of the existing systems. As the town continues to investigate the full cost of needed renovations and repairs, staff recommends adopting a reimbursement resolution. The U.S. Treasury regulations permit an issuer to reimburse itself for all preliminary costs of a project, which includes engineering or other soft costs. However, the town may only reimburse itself for hard costs of construction if it has adopted a resolution. The resolution does not commit the town to issue debt or to reimburse itself from an issuance, but does allow the town to claim costs incurred prior to closing towards a future debt issuance. We explained that we are in the process of obtaining qualified engineers to develop a set of specifications to resolve the issues we've identified. We're trying to take a comprehensive approach to that so we don't ignore problems that may flare up in the future and be more expensive, and also to make sure that we don't spend money twice on temporary fixes. In addition to heating, cooling, and electrical, we're also looking at things such as the elevator system in town hall, the windows, which are also original to the building, and also the possibility of architectural design services to see if we can better utilize the existing space of the police department in the basement. Again, the question was asked if this means the town is committed to going into debt for this activity. The response is not yet, and we would very much like to avoid that, but we want to make sure we present a very accurate estimate of costs so we don't waste time, effort, and money on things that probably would not end up happening otherwise. On a motion by Vice Mayor Darrell Updike, seconded by Councilman Stacey Haley, Town Council voted unanimously to adopt the reimbursement resolution as presented by staff. That ended the public portion of last night's meeting. There were a couple of closed sessions. The first dealt with town-owned property in the Peaks Magisterial District of Bedford County. I can tell you that council talked about some properties that the town owns adjacent to the Stony Creek Reservoir. The discussion essentially related to administrative and legal status of those properties in regard to adjacent properties owned by the Bedford Regional Water Authority, as well as discussion of the town's interest and intent regarding what it wants to do with the properties it currently retains. The other closed session was related to our ongoing plans to withdraw from the commercial solid waste operation. Again, that's a budget-driven decision. Essentially, the costs of disposal have risen to such a point that we find that we would have had to raise our rates for that collection service to a point that, candidly, we didn't think was competitive with what the private providers of that service are currently providing. Again, we are discontinuing the collection of that particular solid waste October 1st. That also means that we will no longer be obligated to operate a transfer station related to that service. And so we are exploring a request for proposals to offer that to other interested parties who may find that valuable. And we're looking to leverage the value of that to minimize some other costs. I will just mention that, again, the biggest issue with commercial solid waste was not collection so much as disposal. For many years, and there is a difference between residential and commercial. Residential solid waste is currently collected and disposed for a fee. We dispose that at the Bedford County landfill at no cost. On the commercial side, however, we've had an arrangement where we identified the lowest tipping fees for landfill facilities around. And for years, that has been Pittsylvania County, just above Danville, between there and Lynchburg. Pittsylvania County is raising those tipping fees. There's also the fact that we have a contract to haul our trash from our transfer station to Pittsylvania County with a private hauler. Based on those tipping fees increasing, the hauler indicated that those costs would have to be passed along. So that's really more of the background behind the commercial trash issue. We are looking to develop that RFP to potentially lease that facility to people who might be interested, and without violating any protocols related to closed session. That was essentially the nature of that discussion. You might anticipate seeing a proposed RFP on a future town council agenda for action. And with that, we did finally wrap up last night. It was a long meeting for the council members and staff, but I think everybody appreciated the energy in the room, particularly seeing so many people who are so passionate about this community. A lot of times we are concerned when we don't hear from citizens that maybe people aren't paying attention, or worse yet, would be apathetic, but it's gratifying to know that that's not the case here. Bedford is a unique and special place. It's certainly worth caring about passionately, and we saw that last night, and I think council heard that overwhelmingly over the course of the last couple of weeks. Certainly we hear it over the course of the years as well, though. And it's not something we take for granted. Again, I've said it before on this podcast, we live in a day and age where we have flexibility in terms of where we want to be, and ultimately we know people can choose to live and do business anywhere they want. We're grateful for the fact that folks choose to do that here. We're grateful for the people who've been born and raised here and the rich history we have. And we're also excited about welcoming new neighbors and new businesses who will contribute to the ongoing history of Bedford. And we are anticipating growth coming to our community. We see evidence of that coming up with new developments in both housing and with the hotels that were mentioned. We do need to make sure we take care of what we've got and maintain that, so we're sensitive to that as well. And in that regard, I thank you very much for your time and indulgence in listening to this recap of council. Again, encourage you to participate directly at your convenience. We want to make that as convenient as possible. During regular business hours, you can always call Town Hall at 587-6001. Of course, that's area code 540. We're open, except for the rare occasion of a state holiday, Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. The treasurer's office does close at 4:30 each day because in addition to accepting payments, they also have to provide several administrative services related to the town's finances. Also, I'd encourage you to email me directly. My email address is bwarner@bedfordva.gov. And again, if you can't make the meetings, you can watch them live online. You can watch the recording, or you can go to our website at www.bedfordva.gov and read the minutes from not only our town council meeting, but also that of our appointed boards, such as the Economic Development Authority and the Planning Commission. Again, we present this in cooperation with our partners at Media Squatch. And I also want to mention that Woody Watts, who heads the company, is also helping us with a redesign of our town website, which we will be rolling out soon. And we look forward to that being both a fresh and more user-friendly tool for your use. Again, I thank you for your attention. Thank you for your efforts and passion for this community, and hope you will join me next time as we recap the events of what we hope will be the world's best little town.